Good afternoon. I'm Wayne Burton, President of North Shore Community College. I want to welcome you to this very exciting debate today. I want to thank Mass Inc., who is a leader in setting these debates up, which is so important to the electorate. I also want to acknowledge the three sponsors of the event. The college is hosting the Lynn Area Chamber of Commerce, Ralph Sevenor, President, and Leslie Gould is the Exec Director. The Lynn Business Partnership, Gordy Hall is the President, Ted Grant is the Exec Director, and the North Shore Latino Business Association, with the Exec Director, Francis Martinez, and the President, Domingo Dominguez. Lynn has a vibrant business community and a great ec development team, and I think Lynn is on the move. Our strategic plan is called Believe in Lynn. It has many facets to it because the future is here in Lynn. I want to say that it's very appropriate we have a debate focused on the American dream at a gateway college in a gateway city. Never has education been more important than it is today. It's estimated that 70% of the jobs in the Commonwealth in the next 5 years will require post-high school education and training. It's all in our best interest to support the gateway cities. 4 years ago, to honor the countries of origin of our students, we started a flag program where we collected flags from all of the students who came from other countries initially. And what you see hanging in this gym, 80 flags from the countries of origin that attend North Shore Community College right now. We literally ran out of room. They come from Afghanistan and Albania to Vietnam and Zambia. We also serve upwards of 500 combat veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. And we're very proud of that. And we serve about as many students with disabilities. We are democracy's colleges. That's what we're called. And our goal should be non-debatable. That is to make education an opportunity for everyone who needs it. And I think how we do it is certainly debatable. But whether you're Mitt Romney, Barack Obama, or Jesse Paiva, who I'm very proud today is here, the editor of the North Shore, to participate as a student. My hope for today is that you'll hear from the candidates directly and hear their values, their ideas, their hopes, their dreams. And when you leave tonight, you'll be much better informed about what they believe in, and you can match their ideas and dreams with yours and make an informed vote on Election Day, which is so critical to the future of this country. And speaking of critical to the future of the country, I'm very happy to introduce our own JFK, the Mayor of Lynn, Judith Flanagan Kennedy.
It is my distinct pleasure to welcome all of you to the great city of Lynn. And I think I'd just like to pick up on something that Dr. Burton mentioned, and that is that what we have today here is so valuable and so lacking in our society today. And that is the opportunity to see our candidates before us discussing the issues. And we have the benefit of seeing that as raw footage, live and unfiltered. We don't have to go through a TV screen or a radio speaker. We can judge for ourselves. We can evaluate body language, facial expressions, tones of voice, to really get an in-depth look of these candidates, and what they represent. So enough of the 30-second sound bites and the 1-minute interviews, if we're lucky. Today we'll have a couple of hours of really getting to know these three gentlemen on stage. So thank you all for caring enough about the future of your representation for attending today. And I hope we have a lively debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Flanagan and President Burton. My name is Bruce Moll. I'm the editor of Commonwealth Magazine, which is published by Mass Inc. We're the hosts of today's debate about the American dream between the candidates for Congress from the 6th Congressional District. The candidates are Congressman John Tierney, the Democrat. Daniel Fishman, the Libertarian. And Richard Tisei, the Republican. This debate will center around questions from me and our panel, which includes Donna Capodalupo of wickedlocal.com, Sean Lettern, the editorial page editor of the Lynn Daily Item, and Jesse Pava, a student at North Shore Community College and the editor of the school paper, The Pennant. Now, as we get into the debate, a little clapping at the beginning here is good, but as we get into it, I'd like you to hold all your applause so we don't have to penalize any of the candidates and take away time from them. So please just listen. Don't get up and start cheering. I'd also ask you, if you have a cell phone, turn it off, because they can be sometimes annoying during a debate. I'd like to explain why the focus of today's debate is the American dream. We've been concerned that campaigns are becoming more about optics than ideas, about sound bites rather than thoughtful answers. 2 years ago, Mass Inc. and Commonwealth Magazine hosted a gubernatorial debate on the single issue of Cape Wind and the state's energy policies. To our pleasant surprise, it was well received. So we decided to try that approach again during this election cycle, offering to host debates about issues relative to the American dream, the middle class, jobs, and the economy. We asked the candidates in the 6th Congressional District to participate, and they all accepted. Since then, there has been a lot of controversy about whether we steered clear of sensitive issues in the campaign as a condition of hosting this debate. The answer is no, we did not. But I would be lying if I didn't tell you that all the furor hasn't caused a lot of soul searching at Commonwealth and Mass Inc. about whether our focus is too restrictive. In the end, we decided to stick to our original concept and let the candidates decide how they want to answer the questions. Our goal is not to prevent the candidates from discussing issues of importance to them, but to make sure that they discuss issues of importance to voters. The American dream is important to the psyche of this nation. It's the notion that hard work will propel you up the economic ladder, allowing you to raise a family, see your children do even better than you. In the wake of the Great Recession, that dream is in deep trouble. The middle class is being squeezed. Income levels are stagnant. Income equality keeps edging up. Students are buried in debt, and retirements are being postponed. We devoted an entire issue to this subject a year ago at Commonwealth Magazine. Instead of the American dream, we called it the American scream. Which leads me to our first question, which will go first to Daniel Fishman. In your view, what is the single greatest threat to the future of the American dream, and what specifically would you do as congressman to address that threat? Mr. Fishman?
Thank you. It's good to have a debate here at a college. It inspired me to do a little homework. A New Englander, James Adams, no relation to the Massachusetts Adamses, invented the phrase the American dream in 1931. He wrote, "The American dream is a dream of a land in which life should be better, richer, and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability. It is not a dream of motor cars and high wages, but a dream of social order in which each man and each woman can attain their fullest stature regardless of birth and position." And that is the dream. No matter what, you should be able to improve your life by working hard, because your hard work should be rewarded. And you, as a free person, are born with a clean slate, owing nothing to anyone. But that's not true anymore. We've become a debtor nation. Last year, interest on the national debt was $450 billion. Last year, the government spent $1.3 trillion more than they had. Where did that money come from? We borrowed it with a promise that someone was going to pay it back. And that someone is you. you are on the hook for that debt. And what it can't borrow, the government is printing. Last week, the Fed announced that they were going to print $40 billion, putting it into the economy each month, $40 billion, through quantitative easing. We know they don't have the cash. They're printing it. And when they print that money, the money in your bank account is now less. And that is the threat to the American dream, that what you earned now is worth less because somewhere in Washington a printing press was turned on. The value of your money has become less. Debt is the threat. And we know this. And we can change it. But it can't change with politics as usual, because right now government has become a tool for the corporations. Government has become a tool to spend and tax. If I go to Congress, I will stop that.
Mr. Tierney?
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank Dr. Burton and all those folks here at North Shore Community College for providing the forum space, and all the sponsors, as well as our panelists here today, my colleagues on the debate. I think the greatest threat to the American dream right now is the increasing disparity in wealth, and disparity in income, and the fact that people that are already well off seem to have that growing in their favor. More tax giveaways, more favors, more loopholes, while people in the middle class are worried about keeping their jobs, and the jobs they have, they're worried about making enough income to sustain their families and participate in their community. And people that aspire to the middle class are afraid they're going to be shut out. And that's the concern that we have. What's compounding that is a majority in today's Congress that is obstructionist of trying to do anything about it, letting policies go forward that would be helpful. They are partisan, and they are simply extremely ideological. And that's not me speaking. That's a centrist from the Brookings Institute and somebody from the American Enterprise Institute, Norm Ornstein, who thinks that that agenda that's being set there is not working in the favor of a policy that would allow us to buttress the middle class, grow this country from the middle out, and make sure that we have a strong infrastructure that can make us competitive with the rest of the world. I think that it's unfortunate that my opponent, Richard Tisei, has sided with that group, with the young guns, with the people down there that ideologues on that. He has asked them to do the strategy for his campaign. He's taken $3 million from them. And instead of talking about the issues in the campaign and the way that we can get the middle class moving again and proceed for the American dream, lashing out on a negative personal campaign. This idea of not wanting to go forward, of not wanting to make sure that people can have a job, of not supporting education, of not supporting health care, is working against our interest. I don't agree with that. I've fought all my life. I've been the beneficiary of the American dream. I had grandparents that didn't get out of grammar school, parents that got through high school, but they allowed my brother and sister and I the opportunity to go to school, through college, and on to graduate school. I worked my way through, and that was fine. As a janitor at the State House, doing other jobs. And the fact of the matter is that's an opportunity everybody ought to have. You go down and fight for these things, whether it's education, as I've fought for all my life, for health care, for a strong infrastructure, for opportunity for our children, and for security for our seniors. If I'm fortunate enough to get reelected, that's what I continue to fight for in Congress.
Mr. Tisei?
Thank you very much, and thanks to Mass Inc. for having this, and the panelists, and everybody for being here. I'm glad we're having this debate today about the American dream. I work in real estate, and let me tell you, over the past few years, I really feel as though I've been on the front lines and seen all the struggles that families all across this district are facing. You know, I've sat in kitchen tables, and I've seen the pain in people's faces when they tell me, Richard, you know, I don't want to sell my home, but I lost my job. I can't afford to live here anymore. I've dealt with senior citizens. You know, you sit there, you go into their home, you have to tell them that their home is worth a third less than they thought. That's their biggest retirement. That's their, you know, what they're planning to, the way they're planning to live for the rest of their lives. And you see the anguish on their faces. You know, I've dealt with a lot of people who have lost their homes through foreclosure, and it's a terrible, terrible situation that you can't do anything about. Take a look around the country right now. 23 million people are either unemployed or underemployed. 1 in 7 people in this country is on food stamps. 50% of young people graduating from college right now can't find jobs. A child being born today will already be responsible for $60,000 in government debt before they take their first step. What kind of start in life is that? I'm running for Congress because I believe we are a great country, and I know that we can solve our problems and restore the American dream. But in order to do that, the first thing you have to do is stop the name-calling and end the dysfunction and gridlock down in Washington that's undermining our country. During the time I was a state senator, there were 3 major fiscal emergencies in Massachusetts, and we made it through each and every one of them. The reason we were able to solve our problems was because everybody came together, both Democrats and Republicans, and did what was in the best interest of the people. I was proud to be a part of those efforts. Those experiences taught me that if you want to get things done, you have to be willing to put partisanship aside, realize you can't always have it your way, and be able to work with others. We have to put this country back on track, and that's why this race is so important. It gives us a chance right here in the 6th Congressional District to bring about real change in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Now we're going to start with some questions from our panelists. The first one will be from Donna to Mr. Tierney.
Congressman Tierney, many voters are looking for a champion for the middle class, especially this year. What makes you that champion rather than either of your opponents?
Well, I would build off of the work that we've already done in Congress on that. We fought very hard to make sure that there was access and affordability for higher education. The laws that we passed basically lowered the interest rates on student loans, increased the Pell Grant value back what it was when it was first originated, and also enforced the income-based repayment plan for students, so they only had to pay a percentage of the discretionary income once they graduated and had a job, and then some was forgiven at the end of a 20-year period. So we've worked on that. We've got health care. That's important. 30 million more people having health care that didn't have it before. Here in Lynn, the health care center has had a great expansion. It serves now about half of the children and about a third of the families. We provided opportunities for people to go to work through job training. And I've written the Workforce Investment Act proposal that is out there that I hope will be voted on going forward on that basis. We put people to work. We created or saved almost 4 million jobs after the recession. The Great Recession was involved from the practices during 2001 to 2008. Focused on those things that are important to people, getting work, being prepared for work, having an opportunity for education, having health care, and having work done that's going to build the core of this country, whether it's roads and bridges and ports and airports and seaports, or expanding broadband, having information technology at hospitals, those things that matter to put people to work in private and public jobs and give people an opportunity.
Mr. Tisei, can you answer the question?
Well, I would just say that the best thing we can do for the middle class is get the economy going again. Because the problem that we have right now is that we don't have any jobs being created that can support middle-class families. And I've been all over this district over the past few months, and I've talked to all kinds of businesses, small, medium, large, and they all say the same thing to me. You know what, Richard, I don't want to hire anybody right now because I'm afraid. I don't know what the tax policy is going to be coming out of Washington. I have no idea what the budget's going to be. I have no idea what new regulation is going to be coming down that's going to affect my business. And you know, the last thing employers want to do right now is to hire somebody and then have to lay somebody off. I had to do that in my business, and let me tell you, it's really tough. So creating jobs is the thing that really need to be done. And again, we probably have right now the worst business climate that we've had since the Great Depression. There's a disconnect between what's going on here in the 6th Congressional District, other parts of the country, and what's going on in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the only place in the entire country where there wasn't a housing slowdown, where people are getting more and more wealthy. And that's an indication, I think, of the disconnect between what's happening down there and what's happening in everybody's lives.
Mr. Fishman?
A direct answer. One of the things that we need is absolutely jobs. And how do we make that happen? Government does not make jobs. Government is a facilitator for our entire country, but they don't make jobs. Businesses make jobs. Small businessmen make jobs. Right now, there are 20 million small businesses in the United States that have no employees whatsoever. The first thing I would do when I get to Congress is to propose a thing I'm calling the first 3 are free. It's a libertarian idea. It says that the first 3 employees for any business, the employer does not have to do anything for them except for write them a check. They're responsible as contractors to handle their own wages. If you can even get 1/6 of those businesses, 3 million people, to hire 1 employee, that's 1% of the population of the United States. We can make a dramatic impact immediately on employment by getting government out of the way, getting these people back to work, getting a foothold in so that somebody can start working and show what they're worth. That is the American dream, the ability to show what you are capable of.
Don, I think you have a quick follow-up.
A very quick follow-up for Mr. Tisei. How would you create jobs?
Well, the first thing I would do is do no harm. And I say that because, we haven't created many jobs over the last few years here in this district. The only bright spot has been the medical device industry. And there's a new tax that's about to take effect on January 1st. It's a 2.3% excise tax on medical device companies. Not on their profits, but on their gross income. There's no other tax like it. And I've been going around talking to medical device companies. There's one company here in the North Shore that's implemented a hiring freeze already. Another one that's talking about laying people off. There have been a number of votes that have come up in the Congress to repeal that tax. We have the highest cluster of medical device companies of anywhere in the country here in the North Shore. The jobs pay between $60,000 and $75,000. They're good jobs. Elizabeth Warren has come out and said this is a terrible tax. It's going to stifle innovation. Nikki Tsongas and Keating both voted to repeal the tax. But our own congressman, who had the most to lose in his district, is a steadfast supporter of that tax. And as the congressman from this district, I will make repealing that tax my #1 priority.
Mr. Tierney,
Bruce,
you want 15 seconds to respond
well,
to
not
that?
15 seconds. That tax was put on at twice the level that it was originally. It was the industry that came to Democrats in Massachusetts who then worked with and opposed the Speaker, opposed the President, and got them to cut that rate in half, expand it out to more people so it would be less onerous on them, make it apply to foreign companies that were importing and given an exclusion for exports, so that the company association then went to the President and wrote to them that they wanted to be a part of the health care bill, and they thought that was fair, and they moved forward on that basis. The only bills that the Republicans have brought forward to eliminate the tax have been as a pay-for that, to eliminate some 350,000 people's opportunity to get health care under the Affordable Care Act, so it was a poison pill. Nobody likes taxes if they don't have to pay them. If you think you can eliminate that tax, then find a pay-for that is not unfairly attacking other people, and find a way that would help that other people that would participate in the Affordable Care Act won't run for the door and think that they're not going to participate as well.
Very quickly.
I just say that the medical device industry wanted that tax is ludicrous, because you have to go around and talk to the people who own these companies and the employees who are there. Nobody wanted that tax because they all knew what was going to happen.
Well, then they should have stopped their association from writing to the White House that they thought it was fair and they were happy to contribute and do their part.
Well, with all due respect, Congressman, I've been out and talking to the local businesses.
As have I.
And they're really worried about it because they're not going to be as competitive as they should be. And it's an important issue for the people and the workers in this district.
They have 30 million new customers as a result of the Affordable Care Act, and this will make them quite competitive.
And most of those customers are on Medicare, so they're not really affected by what you're saying.
Next question is from Sean to Mr. Tisei.
Senator Tisei, because of the stalemate in Congress over how best to bring down the federal deficit and national debt, we're faced with congressionally mandated sequestration cuts set to take effect January 2nd, which, according to a report last July by the Aerospace Industries Association, stand to eliminate 473,000 manufacturing jobs in America and potentially wipe out General Electric's aircraft engine plant in Lynn if its major defense contracts are canceled. Which one of you is best suited to protect the roughly 3,000 manufacturing jobs at GE's Riverworks plant? And in the bigger picture, which one of you is most willing and able to reach across the aisle in Washington to help break the logjam over the debt and the deficit and get the nation's business done?
Well, first of all, as a member of the majority, I think I would be in a better position to protect the GE plant in Lynn and also for other industries in Massachusetts. I think it's important to have somebody in the room from Massachusetts when those decisions are being made. And right now, we do not have anybody in our congressional delegation that can go to the Speaker and go to the chairs and say, this is important to my area. So, and I got to just say, this whole sequestration issue is just a perfect indictment of how dysfunctional our government has become. You know, we don't even have a budget in place. 3 years we've gone without a budget. It doesn't make any sense. And the fact is that everybody just abdicated their responsibility in the Congress and said, well, we'll have the super committee decide everything, and if they can't decide, we'll have automatic cuts. And I'm very worried about the defense cuts in particular because look what's going on in the world right now. I mean, at any moment, a spark could just turn into, you know, a huge problem. And we need to make sure that we have the resources and we have a military that's strong that can protect this country.
Mr. Fishman?
The sequestration of the $100 billion over 10 years is a issue that, as Mr. Tisei said, it absolutely illustrates our dysfunction. The problem, though, is that what we have with a two-party system is the parties demonizing each other and blocking each other from doing anything. You've heard Mr. Tierney, Congressman Tierney, say that we have an obstructionist Congress. There's something to that, but there needs to be a realization of the fact that there have been 33 votes to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act. Those representatives are not going home to their districts and losing elections because their people are unhappy with them because of what they've done. They're representing the people. We need to understand that we are a government that works with 300 million people right now. If we make a decision, even though it's a majority, that results in 140 million people being unhappy, that's not the way our government is meant to work. We're not meant to be a monolithic government like that. When we talk about how we can change our government for the better, we have to find a way to make government be more responsive to us and to be limited.
Congressman Tierney.
Thank you. Well, sequestration is a great example of what happens when you have a majority in Congress that is ideologically extreme. I was proud to be part of a Congress from 2007 to 2010 that was the most productive Congress since 1964. We had a president for the first couple of years, George Bush, that we didn't necessarily agree with philosophically, but we passed a record number of bills that were actually signed into law, about 71% of them bipartisan. And that's the way the Congress should work. We got good things done. This most recent Congress has passed 61 bills this year. That's 1/4 of the number of bills that the Do-Nothing Congress passed back in Truman's day. We need to do better than that. The sequestration was a result of the Republican majority overruling their own speaker, who had made an agreement with the president to try and find a way through this. They wouldn't let their own speaker make the deal, and consequently they almost had us all go into default, which was a serious issue. Just the threat of default set back this country and had us have our rating dropped. So it was that led to the sequestration. 174 Republicans voted for it. It was their idea. They pushed for it. It's wrong. If we're going to cut jobs in the military, then we ought to do it because we have a strategic plan that's going to make us stronger and more secure, not because somebody has a notion that you just cut some arbitrary number on that. So we can do better. We just need better leadership and a better plan going forward. And the sequestration is a bad idea for America.
Is it a Republican problem, Mr. Tisei?
Excuse me?
Is it a Republican problem down in Washington?
No, I think it's dysfunctional. I think you have both parties down in Washington right now that you have people on both sides. Congressman Tierney votes 99% of the time with the Democratic leadership. You have Republicans voting 99% of the time with the Republican leadership, and nobody's putting America first right now. And I think most of the problems that come up, it's very easy. I mean, I've been in the State House. I've seen the way it works. It's very easy to sit down with somebody and work these problems out. But you have to you have to be willing to put America first, and not enough people are doing that.
Bruce, allow me to interject. I mean, my opponent, Mr. Tisei, was the leader of the Senate Republicans. He voted with Republicans 100% of the time. It's comical to listen to you start making on that basis. And when you agree with the Democrats, you agree with them. When we agree with the Republicans, we agree with them.
Please,
The fact of the matter is that it was the Republicans that are in the lead in the House this time that we got dysfunctional and almost went into default and ended up with sequestration. That never happened when the Democrats were in charge. 71% of the bills, a record number of bills were signed into law, were done on a bipartisan basis.
One quick comment back.
I just say again, yeah, I was the leader, so I voted with myself 100% of the time. I guess that makes sense. But
Exactly.
Please.
And by the way, Scott Brown voted with me 99% of the time, in case anybody was wondering. But I do have a record as an independent-minded person. When Governor Romney was here, I voted with Governor Romney 54% of the time. I voted against Governor Romney 46% of the time.
All right.
And what I did is when things came up, I would say, what's best for the people in my district? What's best for the people of the state? And as the congressman from this district, I'm not going to vote with the leadership 99% of the time like the current congressman does. I'm going to be independent-minded, and I'm going to do what's best for the people of this country.
I guess that makes Scott Brown not very independent because he voted with his Republican leadership 99% of the time. He must be quite the partisan.
All right. Next question from Jesse to Mr. Fishman.
Mr. Fishman, I'm going after the American dream, but it's a struggle. I dropped out of high school, got my GED, and later enrolled here at North Shore Community College. I work 3 part-time jobs to pay my way while in school, and I rely on loans and scholarships to pay my tuition, fees, and pricey textbooks. I hope to transfer to a 4-year school when I graduate, but I expect to be left with more than $50,000 of debt. On top of that, my job prospects are uncertain, and I'm not alone and I'm not the worst case. What would you do to help young people like me struggling with education, debt, and an uncertain job future?
It's a great question, Jesse. I went through the same thing. I didn't get my bachelor's degree until much later in life. went back to school after having worked at a low-paying job for a long time. It's important that we understand, though, why college is so expensive right now. College is expensive because there's a giant pile of money that the government has said, we want everybody able to go to college, come here and take out of this pile. The idea is great. It allows students to go to college. And so they came, they got a shovel, they brought the money to the college. The college says, wow, you have a shovel full of money. And there's a pile? Let us get you a wheelbarrow. You can get that money to us faster. We're going to find ways to help you get more financial aid so that you can pay more money to our college. At this point in time, we have a college system where, because there's an unlimited pile of money, prices keep going up. They're going to keep raising prices until the money isn't there anymore. Government has a great role here. I'm a product of a state school. I went to UMass Boston. And I know that the states can provide competitive education. You guys are all going to a community college. You know the quality that you're getting right here. The states can provide education. The states can lower costs by not having a bucket truckload full of money available to pay for college.
All right. Mr. Tierney.
Well, Jesse, I understand what you're saying completely. I worked my way through Salem State with multiple jobs and then through law school as a janitor at the State House and other jobs as well. And I understand what you're saying, but that's why we have Pell Grants for students that are lower income students, the availability to give them assistance on that. That's why we pass lower interest rates, cut them in half in some instances, because sometimes you do have to borrow. And that we have the income-based repayment program, that if you do have to borrow and borrow a direct loan, that when you get out, you know you have a set amount, a percentage of your discretionary income that you have to pay, so you'll be able to start your life, take the job that you want, have a family, buy a house, do the things that you need. We paid for that. We paid for that by getting rid of the middleman lender on private loans that were getting a guarantee of their loan at the back end and a subsidy to make the loan. We saved $61 billion. We didn't raise taxes. We saved $61 billion, and those are the resources we used to increase the Pell value, to lower the interest rates, to do the income-based repayment program. You know, we can commit to that, and we can try to make it easier for students all the way through. We should find a way to make the rest of the student loans a lower interest rate, because with the low interest rates today, it's not fair that the students and families are paying the higher rate that they are.
Okay.
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts is 47th in its contribution to public higher education. I had to put in the education bill a maintenance of effort provision requiring that states continue to keep their contribution up, because the federal government was putting more money in. We didn't need them doing what they had done of walking out the back door and taking the state resources away.
Mr. Tisei.
Well, I just say I'm the first member of my family to graduate from college with a degree, and I did it in 3 years to help save my parents the tuition, because it was a very expensive school here and back then. As a state senator, I worked really hard to make sure that our community colleges and our state colleges were properly funded. 3/4 of all the kids in the state go to them. It was great to see Governor Patrick this week set aside $15 million for job training for community colleges. I think that that's a good thing. As a congressman, I'll support Pell Grants, I'll support Stafford loans. I needed them to get through college, and I know that other kids do as well. And I want to say I think President Obama is onto something. We do need more transparency in our university system. What Dan's saying is pretty much true. You know, why are college costs increasing 2 or 3 times the rate of inflation? Because there's no cost containment pressure on those universities. So I do think that there are a lot of different things that you could do. I do think maybe tying federal aid to whether or not a university is you know, has a huge inflation rate. Makes a lot of sense.
Next question from Donna to...
You know, I'm going to just ask Dan to sit here for a second. You know, the state colleges are losing money from state to state as time goes on. Governor Patrick has changed the dynamic on that, has actually started making more contributions to change that. But during the time that my opponent, Richard Tisei, was in the State House, for all the time since he was in college to almost presently, Massachusetts has been 47th in contribution on that. So where it used to be a student going to a state institution would pay 25% and the public would pick up 75%. Now it's student and family 75% and the student 25%. The people that Mr. Tisei is taking $3 million for his campaign and who are running his campaign and who he would vote to run Congress again, it's their budget, the Ryan budget, that cuts $166 billion out of higher education. It cuts the Pell Grants, cuts the income-based repayment program, eliminates it, and raises interest rates again. Those are the people that he would vote if he were elected the first vote to put in charge.
Well, first of all, the congressman knows I've said I'm not going to vote for the Ryan budget. Secondly, we didn't have a printing press at the State House like the Capitol does. You know, we had balanced budgets here in Massachusetts, and we went through some really rough times. But I do think, as far as the state goes, the state has stepped up and done a good job funding community colleges as well as state colleges. One of the great things we did was the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, where we said if you're the top 25% in MCAS, you get to go to State University and not have to pay tuition. I think that those are the types of things that can be done to try to help kids right now.
Next question, Donna to Mr. Tisei.
Mr. Tisei, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to revisit the polarized climate issue in Washington. One might argue that the only way to make the American dream attainable for all people is for legislators to work together to find realistic, bipartisan solutions to the nation's problem. Given the perception, or perhaps the reality, of a polarized Congress, that seems impossible. How would you specifically make Congress more effective?
Well, I served in the legislature. I had no problem crossing the aisle. In fact, you know, one of my problems is a lot of times Republicans got mad at me because I voted with Democrats a lot when we had problems here in the state that I thought it needed to be done. I was in the minority in the legislature, but I passed a lot of bills. I helped work on the Welfare Reform Act and wrote the anti-fraud provisions. I passed a bill to make it easier for teachers, for people changing careers to become teachers. It's called the Alternative Certification Law. And healthcare employees, a lot of people were getting fired because they were reporting substandard care and they were at-will employees. I sponsored a bill that became law that provided whistleblower protection for those employees. I filed a bill that passed for veterans here in Massachusetts to give them preference for state-owned housing. I also wrote the bill that created Zoo New England, took both of the zoos away from state control. The state was running them into the ground and set up a private-public partnership to run them. So I have a record of being able to work with Democrats to get things done, and that's exactly what we need in Washington, D.C. right now.
Mr. Fishman?
When we talk about realistic bipartisan support and what will I have to do to reach across the aisle, I'm in the middle. It's not such a big reach for me. I have the ability to say, I am not beholden to a party. I am not beholden to a corporate sponsor. I'm beholden to you. I'm an average citizen, and I'm running for office because I feel like at this point in time, government is completely broken. And the only way it's going to change is if the average person stands up. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not running for office because I want power. I'm not running for office to implement some grand procedure. I'm running for office because I believe it's my civic duty. I believe that Congress can work together. But in order for that to happen, we have to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's not happening anymore. We are looking at a class of professional politicians who are getting elected over and over and over again because they're amazing at winning elections. You know, look at all the supporters that you guys came here. They were able to marshal all you together to come here and represent their political idea. But that is not government. Government is a way of finding all of us to live together and recognizing that when we disagree, it's better to let everybody have their disagreements.
Mr. Tierney?
Well, I think this goes back to the point we made earlier that we've had chances when Democrats were in charge of having 71% of a record number of votes that were signed into law be bipartisan and to actually pass. We voted on the Competes Act and got that done for investments in science and research, more teachers at every level in those subjects, Energy Efficiency and Security Act. 130 million people got rebates when President Bush found himself in financial difficulty from his policies. We increased the minimum wage. We passed the education materials bills I talked about earlier. We did the Wartime Contracting Commission that I did with Jim Leach from Iowa, which went over and investigated the fraud, waste, and abuse, and several other investigations, bipartisan basis, the Green Jobs Act, passed to train people, the GI Bill modernization, goes on and on. These things can be done, but it's difficult to do with such a partisan group as is now leading the House, the group that Mr. Tisei would vote for to put in charge. It would be the Ryan budget, whether he voted for it or not, if he voted to put them in charge, and that would be his first vote. It would be that vote that would allow them to want to give tax cuts to millionaires to make the rest of us in the middle class pay extra money and lose the investments in health care and education and veterans benefits and all those things which make us strong.
Mr. Tisei, short response?
Well, that's basically Washington talk. You know, I mean, the things that the congressman's saying I'm going to vote for or against, I have no idea what he's talking about. It's just all poll-tested things that he throws out there. You know,
Please.
The one thing I can assure the people of this district is I can stand on my own 2 feet. I did it for 26 years, and when issues came up, I would look and say, what's best for the people of the district? 2 years from now, if I'm the congressman, people aren't going to say, well, that guy voted 99% of the time and he's a rubber stamp for the leadership. I'm going to be somebody who's independent-minded and who does the right thing for the people of this district.
Well, you know, Bruce, let me tell you that sounds a little strange for somebody that took $3 million from somebody and told them they're going to stand on their own 2 feet. I may be just a two-decker kid from Salem, but when somebody gives you $3 million, they think you're in their debt on that. And this is the first vote that he would take, and he would take it to put that gang in charge, and they would run their agenda on that. Now,
please, all right, Mr. Tisei, briefly come back.
This is the same individual that took the $3 million and then went out and said the Tea Party is a godsend, and said it multiple times,
Mr. Tierney,
and said he thought the Ryan budget was a good start.
Mr. Tierney, Mr. Tisei, please be quiet.
Well, here's the same congressman who took $600,000 from every single PAC in Washington, D.C. That's who's funding his campaign. All the special interests who don't want to see any change in Washington at all. And I'm proud of the fact that I have been funded by the people of this district. If you take a look at where the funds I've raised have all been from this district, from Massachusetts, people who are tired of the way Washington is working and they want to see change, they want to see independent-mindedness in Washington.
The first stop that Richard Tisei made when he wanted to run for Congress is he went down and he went to the extreme right and he asked them to be the strategist for the campaign. This is them admitting that. Second stop he went was to the Young Guns, Paul Ryan and that gang, for $3 million to run television ads that don't even talk about the issues and don't talk about his record because he has done it, don't talk about what we do because it was their agenda.
Mr. Tisei, brief comeback. Please be quiet.
There's no need to respond to that.
Well, look, I wanted to ask you a question, Mr. Tisei. It's very appealing to say you're going to go down there and vote your conscience, whichever way it goes. But there's almost, it seems like there's very few people that go down there and do that these days. So that middle ground is almost non-existent down there. Are you effective if you're in that middle ground?
No, you know what? I think that there are people. I think that this election, in particular, is going to elect a lot of people who are willing to do that. Again, you need people in the middle that aren't going to just listen to leadership. They're going to try to push solutions forward. And that is the biggest problem in Washington, D.C. And if I was walking in off the street and nobody knew me, that would be one thing. You could question me. But I have a 26-year record in the legislature of being an independent-minded legislator. And again, I mentioned it before, when Mitt Romney was governor, I voted with him 54% of the time. I voted against him 46% of the time. I stood up to him on issues like gay marriage. I'm pro-choice. You know, I've distinguished myself, I think, over the years as somebody who doesn't just talk the talk or walk the walk.
Let's move on to the next question.
Well, I think we're going to talk about that in conscience. You made a comment you think people don't vote their conscience. When I voted against going into Iraq, I voted my conscience. When I voted against getting rid of the Glass-Steagall, I voted my conscience. When I voted, against, tried to get the president to do something more about housing and make sure that people could keep in their homes, and I worked with the fishing industry, and I worked to try to get out of Afghanistan faster, on education, on health care. Those are matters of conscience. On saving Medicare, on making sure we preserve Social Security.
All right.
There are people down there, and I think it's a little bit of a stretch to say that people don't vote their conscience. The question is whether or not the party that you're going to support, the people you're going to put in charge, believe in those things or not.
Since it became a question, I'm going to answer. Will Washington change me? The Libertarian Party, we represent ourselves as the party of principle. I'm not running for any reason other than to go there and to do exactly what I think is right, to do what I think you guys want me to do. I'm running because I want to go there so that we have a voice. If you are not a member of the party, you don't really have a voice in what's happening right now, because that's all that's happening. It's party politics. The only way things can change is if we all stand up and say, it's time to change our government.
All right, next question from Sean to Mr. Fishman.
Mr. Fishman, the American dream has become fleeting for many, not just those hoping to buy their first home, but many who own a home and are behind or upside down in their mortgage due to job loss, medical bills, lower home valuations, and other factors. The Daily Adam has reported stories over the past couple of years about Greater Lynn residents fighting foreclosure, some successfully, some not. Should government pressure lenders to renegotiate with homeowners who are in over their heads? Also, should provisions of the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated commercial bank activities from securities firms, enacted following the Great Depression and repealed in 1999, be reinstated, whereas some economists contend repeal of Glass-Steagall helped set the stage for the Great Recession, and in particular the housing and foreclosure crisis?
Thanks, Sean. Should government pressure banks? Government already bailed out banks. I think that we've seen that the involvement between government and the banking system leads to nothing except for money going from government to the banks. And where does the government get that money from in the first place? It gets it from us via taxes. At this point in time, we have a situation where the government is really being run by corporations and by banks. The idea of a corporation was originally a great idea. The idea is a corporation allows a business person to take a risk, and if the business goes sour, they don't lose their house. The corporation provides them some protection. In the beginning, the corporation was created by government to allow businesses to make money. But now, government is being created by the corporations to allow businesses to make money. We have to find a way to change that. And the only way for that to change is for us to recognize that all power originates from the people. The only way government gets power is by taking it away from us. We have to stand up for our inherent right and our inherent voice in this government.
Mr. Tierney.
Well, thank you, Sean. Yes, I believe strongly that we should make sure that banks lower the interest rates for those people that are in their homes and paying their bills. Right now would be a good time to let them have a lower interest rate. It would put more opportunity for them to keep their home, put more money in their pockets so they could spend on the necessities they have, and have a stimulative effect as well. And we've made the argument with Mr. DeMarco, who heads up the agency that oversees Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who own about half of the mortgages, that he ought to be having a principal reduction program where appropriate as well, avoiding any moral hazard aspect of it, which members of the Fed say can be done, which a number of banks are doing, and which studies show can be done. And ask the president to remove him if he won't do it because he's resisting on ideological grounds. That would help a lot of people stay in their homes, keeps communities strong, and make sure that neighborhoods are strong. I was one of 57 people in Congress in 1999 who voted to not get rid of Glass-Steagall. Everybody thought we were Luddites at the time. It only took 10 years for that to prove to be the case. It never should have been repealed to begin with. The Dodd-Frank Act takes a step in the right direction of putting some protections in against that. I've been with other people who think we should be stronger on that. We should not be putting the depository money, our mortgage money, our student money savings for the students' education at risk with people on Wall Street who want to gamble it away.
Thank you. Mr. Tisei.
Well, I just say in Lynn, when it comes to housing, I hear from a lot of people. Number one, Dodd-Frank, rather than helping people, is actually making it more difficult for people to be able to buy homes, especially if you're creditworthy and you're a small business owner or an independent contractor. For people who need to buy 2-family and 3-family homes in Lynn, the lending regulations are really stringent. It makes it difficult. In Obamacare, once that goes into effect, there's a new 3.8% tax on investment property. So in a place like Lynn, where you want people to come in and invest in property, it's a deterrent for it. Not too long ago, I had a breakfast. I had 20 community bankers all come in and tell me some of the things that they were dealing with on a local level, and they all pretty much said the same thing, that the regulations right now make it really difficult for community bankers to do their job, meaning be creative and lend money out to the community. One banker told me that he had 40% of all the money that he usually lends out at the bank because the regulations are so strict. He can't lend it out right now. And if you're a small business and you need help, it's really difficult to get a loan. And again, the people who really need to get help and loans are the ones, the law of unintended consequences has sort of come in here, and they're the ones who are getting hurt.
Thank you. Next question from Jesse.
I do want to add something on that. We have a situation where Dodd-Frank is still being implemented, so to say that it's had an effect and an adverse effect is sort of strange when the regulations are still being formulated. But the other part of that is that we have a law, put in a law for Small Business Administration to be able to guarantee larger amounts of loans and to allow the small businesses to waive the fees on that. And it resulted in a huge number of loans in this district and in the Commonwealth as well as the country on that. I have the bill to continue that in the Congress, and John Kerry has it in the Senate. It's a good policy. It allows the banks to get capital to small businesses and break through some of that.
Very quick response.
Well, it's good to have a government program, but you don't want everybody to have to be dependent upon the SBA to get a loan for their business. I mean, you want to have local banks being able to do the things they need to do to lend money out to local businesses, startups, and have them, so that they can do well. So
banks make money by lending. Right. There's a risk associated with that. There's no risk if we bail out the banks afterwards. We shouldn't be shocked that the banking system is failing when we've removed the fundamental idea that there should be a risk involved with lending out money.
Next question from Jesse to Mr. Tierney.
Here on campus and in this district at large, there are a number of students who are not yet citizens or maybe undocumented immigrants. Though many have grown up here throughout their childhood and might have U.S.-born siblings, they live in fear of deportation for themselves or their parents. They're struggling to achieve the American dream in the only home that they know. Do you feel they should be granted permission to remain in the country to continue their schooling? And what about after they graduate?
I think the President has done the right thing in his recent actions to allow people to stay here and work through on that, but I'm also a supporter of the DREAM Act. You know, I run into people all the time who were brought here by their parents when they were at a young age. Certainly they had no control over it, who have stayed here and gone through our entire school system and now find themselves in a predicament of either having to return to an area they've never really been to, maybe in a language they don't even speak, or be able to stay here but not be able to go further their education on that. I think we're missing the boat in a couple of instances. It's the right thing to do by those students and families, but it's also the right thing to do economically. We've invested 12 years, or some portion of that 12 years, in giving these children an education. Most of them are ready to go and eager to contribute to society. Let's pass the DREAM Act. Let them have that opportunity, and let's make sure that they then contribute to this economy and this society, and then everybody benefits.
Mr. Tisei. Please.
I support what the President did, but I don't agree with the way he did it. I think it would have been better to do as part of a comprehensive immigration reform bill, which this country really needs. My family immigrated here to Lynn from Italy back in 1918. I think immigration is what has made our country so great over the years. That said, I think it's important that, number one, we protect our borders, because countries don't last very long who don't protect their borders. And number two, we do need a more orderly process for entry into this country. We don't really have a good process right now, and there are a lot of people that we do want to come into this country that face a lot of different obstacles because of our current immigration law. So I'm all for immigration reform.
Mr. Fishman.
I think that when we talk about immigration, we do understand that our country is built on the people who came here and wanted to work hard. My grandparents also immigrated to Lynn, turn of the century in the 1900s, and they started off with not much. They were able to send my dad to college. We got a little bit better. That is the American dream. There's no question about it. One of the things we have to understand, though, is that immigration is a passage to something that's very desirable, American citizenship. And there are a lot of people who are waiting in line. Should we allow people to jump the line? I don't think we can do that. I don't think that's fair. We have to understand that the people who have been waiting in line should not be penalized because they were good, because they followed the rules. What we need to do is find a way to say, we want everybody to be able to come and work. We want you to be able to come here and do what you need to do to provide an income for yourself and for your family. But you need to understand that when you do that, there are obligations. People who work are going to have to pay taxes. A direct solution: immediately start penalizing employers who are employing people who are not legal immigrants. Let anybody who wants to work get a work card, but we have to find a way to say that the people who are waiting in line should not be penalized.
Bruce, a lot
Please.
A lot of what Dan says is well-intentioned sentiment and right in some respects. We do think we need comprehensive reform, and there was a time when Senator Kennedy, Senator McCain, Senator Graham were all working on comprehensive reform, but the people that my opponent, Richard Tisei, supports, the young guns and the extremists in the House, they back them off. And now you can't get John McCain on a bill or Mr. Graham on a bill, and they oppose what the President did. So if your first vote was to put these people back in charge, there'll be no comprehensive reform on immigration, and they'll be opposing the President's action all the way along, and that's the problem.
Mr. Tisei, would you like a few seconds?
No need to comment on that.
Okay. I'd like to put a question. It goes to you first, Mr. Fishman. Last year, I reviewed some tax return data from the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. It showed the top 1% of filers in 2008 accounted for 22% of the state's income as they reported on their taxes. That's up from 12% in 1991. What should government do, if anything, to address this income inequality?
One of the things, I'll give you an even more shocking statistic. The top 400 tax returns accounted for 20% of the thing that are paying. There are 400 families that are incredibly wealthy and incredibly powerful. We have an amazing problem with wealth inequality at this point in time. One of the reasons why, though, is because we are pushing wealth into the system. We are printing money. We are creating money. It should not be a shock to us that the wealthy are good at accumulating wealth. It's exactly what they do. The rich are good at making money. The more that we devalue our currency, the more that we weaken what you and I have in our wallets, what we have in our banking account. Right now, there's a piece of the pie, and everybody has their own little piece. And suddenly government says, you know what? We just made more pie, and we're putting it in here. And now your percentage of the pie is less. We have to find a way to say our currency has to be worth something. When I come home and I cash my paycheck, that should be worth the same amount from day to day. It shouldn't change because of the fact that government is changing things.
Mr. Tierney.
I think the first thing we could do is raise the minimum wage. You know, it would make a big difference for people to get a full-time.
Please.
Raise the minimum wage to be decent. Make people have an opportunity for full-time work instead of employers giving them part-time jobs to avoid paying them more and giving them benefits. Make sure that we partner with industry and with the educational community and non-for-profits on getting a way for people to get the skills and the education that they need to get jobs, but also to improve within that job, to have pathways to keep improving their situation so that they don't think they're hitting a dead end on that. We can stop doing tax giveaways to the people that are already wealthy and stop allowing them to have loopholes that they walk through on that so that their wealth keeps building and the middle class keeps being stagnant or paying more taxes. You know, with the taxes that the internationals are avoiding on this, every small business in our district is paying about $2,100 a year more in taxes because of that. So we need to work on those things, and we can take care of that disparity growth on that by putting a number of those practices in place and moving forward.
Mr. Tisei.
Well, I think the number one thing you have to do is you got to try to grow the economy right now, and you need small businesses in particular to feel comfortable and confident to hire people and to expand and to grow. And they don't feel that way right now at all because they don't know what's coming next. There's no predictability. Again, we don't know what the tax codes are going to be. We don't know, really what's going to be happening 6 months down the line as far as, regulations, taxes, budget. And that's a big problem. And I do think, you look at what's going on right now, I think we have the lowest number of startup companies in the last 30 years. And that should concern everybody because that's where all the jobs are created. There's a lot of different things we can do tax reform-wise. I agree there are a lot of loopholes. There have been 4,000 changes to the tax code in the last 10 years. And most of those changes were made not because they were good policy, but they were made because somebody had a good lobbyist in Washington. So, reducing those loopholes, looking at all the deductions, having a flatter, fairer tax rate, not only on the personal income side, but also on the corporate side, I think would be a really important thing to do, and it would really help to grow the economy.
I'm curious, no one mentioned the Bush tax cuts. Where do you all stand on letting them expire or continuing them?
I'll go first. I personally support a move to the fair tax. It's a consumption tax, 23% on everybody, and then there's no income tax at all. No corporate income tax, no personal income tax. Everybody gets a prebate. The government sends you a check every month for $200. There will be no loopholes. It's a flat sales tax on everything all the time. A corporation buys something, they're going to pay 23%. You buy something, you're going to pay 23%. No tax on food, no tax on rent, no tax on gas. Other than that, it's a fair thing. You don't have to have a friend in Congress to get a loophole.
Mr. Tierney.
But we've already provided an opportunity for 100% of people in this country to get a tax break continuation on the first $250,000 of income. And the people that Mr. Tisei would support, the ones he put in charge, decided they would hold up that so that every American could not get that tax break, so that the top 2% could look for a special tax break for even more on that, which would put another $1 trillion on the deficit, and I think go in the wrong direction on that. But that's some of that brinksmanship that we see down there with the wrong people in charge of this, the ones that are extremists. So for 2% of the people not getting a special tax break, 100% of the people do not get the break on the first $250,000. That's how uncertainty sets in when people make that kind of a thing. And a flatter tax is, I think, another code way of saying the wealthy get to pay less, but the middle class will have to pay more.
Mr. Tisei.
I agree with President Bill Clinton, who just a couple of months ago said that the absolute worst thing you can do right now when the economy isn't doing well is to raise taxes on anyone. And I think he's right. And I think that what we need to do is we need to extend all of the rates and then have the next Congress get together and put together a comprehensive tax reform bill to lower the rates, reduce deductions, and get rid of the loopholes. And I think that that's really the direction that we should head.
And why wouldn't it make sense to take care of 100% of the problem for 98% of the people now and debate the other 2% later, as opposed to end the session in Congress and go home without having done it for anybody? That's how you get uncertainty.
Okay, next question from Donna to Mr. Tierney.
Congressman Tierney, an important component of the American dream is the ability to retire comfortably. What can you do to reassure 6th District voters that they will have adequate resources to enjoy their retirement years?
Well, first that we do is we protect Social Security. You know, it is not part of what created this deficit. And this notion...
Please be quiet. Please be quiet.
This notion that some people have that they're going to take the opportunity now, when we're dealing with a deficit, to attack Social Security is, I think, misguided and moves against or mitigates against people's security. So just as we fought President Bush's and Paul Ryan's and others' attempt to privatize Social Security in 2005, we should make sure that we don't do that now. On that Medicare, we should make sure that we continue doing what we did in the Affordable Care Act, strengthening it. We pushed it out for 8 years on that. We made it stronger. We provided wellness examinations for seniors on that. We provided a way to close the donut hole so they wouldn't have to have so many out-of-pocket expenses on prescription drugs. We give them preventative care to lower the cost in the long run. That bill will save $129 billion in the first decade, $1.2 trillion going forward. We can make sure that companies give an opportunity for people to pay into a savings account and then have to refuse it positively, so that the default is that they actually pay in to start savings and then have to come out the other way. That's been shown to be effective and will help them build up a savings in addition to Social Security and Medicare.
Mr. Tisei.
Well, I think according to President Obama's own trustees, there's a group of trustees for Medicare, and then there's one for Social Security. The Medicare program right now is going to run out of money in 2024, and that's a big problem. And I do think that you have to have Democrats and Republicans working together to make sure that that program is strengthened and is available for future generations. And just for the record, I support Medicare. You know, hundreds of thousands of these brochures went out today. Richard Tisei will end Medicare. And I just want to say for the record, you know, I support Medicare. And I will not vote for any Medicare plan that impacts anybody 55 years or older. I don't think it's fair if you're on the program for the program to change. I think it's, if you're 55 and getting up, it's not fair to pull the rug out from under you. Secondly, I won't support rationing. There's only one person on this stage that's cut Medicare, and that's John Tierney. He voted to cut $714 billion from the Medicare program. Number 3, though, this is the most important thing. No party should ram through a reform proposal. That's what they did with the health care bill. That's why it's so controversial. You need people on both sides of the aisle who are willing to sit down in good faith and figure out a way to be able to extend that program, and also to be able to extend Social Security, because the President's trustees for Social Security have come out and said that that program is going to run out of money in 2035.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Fishman.
Social Security absolutely can be saved, and it should be saved. Right now, there's a cap at $106,000. You don't pay any Social Security on income after that. I'm not in favor of raising taxes, but I am in favor of a fair tax. That is a regressive tax that we're looking at right now, because it hurts people who make less than $106,000 more than people who make $1 million. I absolutely approve of removing the cap for Social Security. That alone will make Social Security a lot more solvent for a long time. I also think it's important that we understand the reality of Medicare. Right now, $5 are going out for every $3 that comes in. That can't work. That cannot be sustainable. When Europeans first came to America, we cut down all the trees, we dumped our trash in the river, we mined the mountains, we had this unlimited resource, and we thought it was amazing, and we just used it up. We view healthcare like that. We view healthcare as a resource. And we're saying, because it's unlimited, we can do anything we want with it. We can provide everything to everyone, but it's not unlimited. We have to find a way to learn a little conservation. We have to find a way to say, we want healthcare to be there for everybody right now, but we also want to conserve it so that it's there for future generations. You should think of me as the Sierra Club of Medicare.
You know, Bruce, I want to know something about the medical flyers that went out. Mr. Tisei went to the young guns and the extremists down there and got $3 million and sent out a whole bunch of flyers saying that $716 billion had been taken out of the health care program, taken out of Medicare to help the health care program, which political review groups have called a pants-on-fire lie, the biggest lie of the century, and also a multiple Pinocchio's lie.
Please, be quiet.
What happened was that certain providers, hospitals, medical device companies, prescription drug companies, decided that they wanted to have the 30 million new customers, and they paid in. We did not overpay insurance companies anymore on Medicare Advantage, and we used that money, the savings and the cost growth, to be able to extend the life. The reason the trustees say it's out to 2024, it was only 2016 until we extended the life. The code word, Mr. Say says, is for people over 55. Right? Now, people under 55 on the Ryan plan that he supports or says was a good start will actually then have their system voucherized. They're going to have to save a lot of money because the age is going to go up for eligibility. They're going to have to save $187,000 more a year just to cover their insurance. And the fact of the matter is, Mr. Tisei is for repealing the Affordable Care Act, which means the current seniors would suffer an increase in prescription drug costs because the donut hole would not be closed, they would not have the wellness examinations, and they wouldn't have the preventative care matters on that. So that's a huge change in Medicare, and changes it and eliminates the benefit as we all know it.
Mr. Tisei, would you
Well,
like
the reason why nothing ever gets done is things like this get sent out, scaring the heck out of all the senior citizens.
Please be quiet. Please be quiet.
And quite frankly, the congressman should be ashamed to have gotten down to this level that he needs to scare people.
Are you not ashamed of a Pinocchio lie and a pants-on-fire lie on the 716
Well, you know, the biggest,
issue?
I got to say, you know, the last campaign cycle, the biggest pants-on-fire lie was that Medicare was going to be ended, okay? So, and I would say if you look in Obamacare and you actually read the bill, it specifically says that they took $700 billion out to pay for Obamacare. That's a fact. You know, you can't do anything about that.
Be quiet.
And I got to say, and it wasn't the beneficiaries directly, and I want to be fair about this. What they did is they said that doctors, we're going to cut your reimbursement rate. So a doctor right now gets, say, 66 cents on the dollar for every Medicare patient he treats. When that gets cut to 33 cents on the dollar, what's going to end up happening is that doctors are going to start to drop Medicare patients. So for people who are on Medicare, they're going to find out that the doctor that they've been going to for years and years isn't going to be able to take them, not because he doesn't want to, but because he's going to go broke if he does. Hospitals are going to be cut under this cut too. And you have a hospital like Anna Jake's up in Newburyport that's just barely making it right now. It's been estimated that 1 out of 5 hospitals, because the reimbursement for hospitals is going to be cut so much under the $714 billion cut that John Tierney voted for, that you're going to see hospitals end up closing. So, you know, again, Medicare needs to be strengthened for future generations. And I'm not in favor of the Ryan plan, but I am in favor of sitting down with anybody, Democrats or Republicans, to provide leadership, to put a plan in place, not a Band-Aid, but a long-term plan to make sure that this important program is available for the next generation as well as this generation.
And and my opponent's
15
plan,
seconds, okay? 15 seconds.
my opponent's plan for doing that is to shorten the life of the plan from 224 to 216 by eliminating the Affordable Care Act, by making seniors pay more for prescription drugs, by voucherizing it for people under 55. The fact of the matter is that hospitals and pharmaceutical manufacturers we're paying into the system as they made an agreement with the White House on that for the 30 million new customers they were getting, and insurers who had been being overpaid were no longer overpaid. That's a decrease in the cost raising that's going on, and that money was applied to improving the program and lengthening its life.
Okay. Let's do a little change of pace. Or did you want to respond to that? Are you okay?
That's fine.
We're going to do a little change of pace here, what we call the lightning round now. We're going to have some questions that will be posed for me and the panelists, and it's just short answer questions. This is not a minute long. This is like 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So we want to just learn a little bit about you and about you, I guess.
This is the part I was nervous about.
So I'll start it, and this goes first to Mr. Tierney. In one word, give your reaction to the Occupy movement.
One word?
One word.
Awareness, I guess.
Awareness?
Awareness.
Okay. Mr. Tisei.
Fraudulent.
Please, please. Mr. Fishman.
Enlightening.
Okay, the next question will come from Jesse, and it will start with Mr. Tisei.
As a teenager, did you attend summer camp, have a summer job, or go to summer school?
Summer job.
Let's see, Mr. Fishman.
Summer job, I worked in my dad's lab.
Mr. Tierney.
Summer jobs.
Next question from Donna, starting with Mr. Fishman.
Mr. Fishman, how old were you when you bought your first home?
32.
Mr. Tierney.
31.
Mr. Tisei.
24.
Next question, Sean, starting with Mr. Tierney.
Citizens United ruling, good or bad?
Bad.
Mr. Tisei.
I would probably say bad.
And Mr. Fishman.
Misunderstood.
And my question, starting with Mr. Tisei, name one person you consider a hero to the middle class.
A hero to the middle class. There's so, I would probably say my mother.
Okay. Mr. Fishman.
Tim Wakefield, day after day.
Mr. Tierney.
Roosevelt's Labor Secretary Perkins.
Okay. Next question from Donna. You start with Mr. Fishman.
Lobbying is out of the question. Your idea of a perfect retirement.
What was the question? Perfect retirement. I've always thought that I wanted to live on an island in the South Pacific, but I don't like seafood. And when we went to Hawaii on our honeymoon, I found out I'm not temperamentally suited for paradise. So I don't know what the perfect retirement for me is.
Mr. Tierney.
I think working in some sense, if not fully engaged in working for income or whatever like that, be volunteer teaching or working somewhere in that area.
Mr. Tisei.
Probably being able to work in some type of public forum without all the stress of maybe your jobs, Bruce. I think that might be a good one.
See, I knew you'd like this stuff. I like it so much. Let's keep going here. This one will be to Mr. Tierney from me. What did you major in college?
Political science, minored in English and history.
Mr. Tisei.
Political science with a minor in history.
Whoa, okay. Mr. Fishman.
Computer science.
And anybody else have one over there you want to do? Sean?
First car, and how much did it cost to fill the tank?
Let's see. Let's start with you, Mr. Tisei.
Oh, I don't even remember how much it cost, but it was a green Riviera, sort of like the Batmobile.
Mr. Fishman.
It was a 74 Dodge Dart. It was also green. It could squeal when you stepped on the accelerator, and it was awesome. I have no idea how much it cost to fill the tank.
Mr. Tierney.
Green must be the color. Mine was a pea green Buick Opal hatchback at the time, and it just cost more money than I had to fill it up.
And last one, let's start with you, Mr. Fishman. What was your first job out of school?
My first job out of school, because I graduated college, or my first job after high school?
Let's say college.
All right, my first job after college, I went to work for a startup in Cambridge called anyday.com.
Mr. Tierney.
I was a janitor while I was going through law school, so I worked there from 5 to 11 at nights.
Was that at the State House you said
earlier? At the State House, cleaning up after Mr. Tisei's gang.
And Mr. Tisei.
My first job out of college was I ran for state representative in Wakefield and Linfield. I was 22 years old and became the youngest Republican ever elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives.
All right, please, please. Now for the closing statements. We're going to go in reverse alphabetical order, which means, Mr. Tisei, you will go first.
Thank you very much. We talked about a lot of issues this afternoon, and I'd suggest to the voters of the district that the biggest issue facing the country right now is the fact that our government in Washington has become dysfunctional and disconnected from the average person. Hyper-partisanship, there are just too many people who are down in Washington right now who are putting party before the country, and they're not willing to put America first. I'd say to some extent our own congressman has become part of that problem. John Tierney has been rated the 20th most partisan Democrat in the House of Representatives. He's voted 99% of the time with the leadership rather than with his constituents. And, when issues come up that are important, he hasn't been willing to go across the aisle and work with the other side to get things accomplished. So for all the people who are frustrated with Washington right now, I would just ask you, what will change if John Tierney is reelected? Sometimes small steps can mean big progress. A small step that the voters can make here in this district on November 6th is to send a new congressman to Washington. One understands the problems that our country is facing and will spend his time, starting on day one, to work with others, regardless of their party, to start solving problems facing our country. We have an obligation to restore the American dream and once again make America an opportunity society for everyone. I respectfully ask for your vote on November 6th, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Tierney.
Well, I think the first vote that anybody that's elected to Congress takes is going to be the most important. And my opponent, Mr. Tisei, would vote for that group that's associated with Paul Ryan and the Ryan budget and the extremely ideological right wing of the party. He's already gone to them for $3 million. He's gone for them to do the strategy on his campaign. And he said that what they want to do with that budget is a good start. So he thinks it's a good start to give millionaires more tax breaks, costing all of us a couple of thousand more. He thinks it's a good start to voucherize Medicare, a good start to cut $166 billion out of higher education. And he goes right on down the line. On the other hand, I was pleased to be with a majority that actually passed a record number of bills and was the most productive Congress since 1964. And I think that when you say he voted 99% or 97% of people, I think let's look at what we voted for. I voted for educational improvements that we discussed at length here that made it more affordable and accessible for people to get to college and higher education. I worked on the Workforce Investment Act, which makes job skills and opportunity for people to get back to work and into work possible on that. We voted to improve the GI Bill, and voted to improve health care, voted to save Medicare, voted to protect Social Security, voted to create and save 3.1 to 3.5 million jobs, voted to make sure that there was infrastructure getting strengthened in this country so that we could compete, voted in fact for the Competes Act, which builds on science, technology, engineering, and math. The idea is that we're going to be spending less, but that we have to have a balanced way to get rid of the deficit that was left to us from the Bush years by making everybody participate. No extra special tax breaks for people that are already wealthy, close the loopholes that are being advantaged by multinational corporations and the wealthy, make sure that we look at the entire budget for any cuts on that, but the money that we do spend, even though less, will have to be strategically invested. And that means investments on things that will put people to work in private industry and allow cities and towns and states to keep those essential public employees working. They're what small businesses need. They're called customers, and we need everybody to put their shoulder to the wheel and work together, and we have to do this in a balanced and fair way.
And Mr. Fishman. Thank you. Thank you.
At the outset, I said that I thought the threat was debt, that the greatest threat to the American dream was debt. It's not quite true. The greatest threat to the American dream is apathy. The greatest threat to the American dream is that we give up on our dreams. The greatest threat is that we believe that government is not us. Government has to be us. The American dream is based on the idea of no more kings, no more princes, no more peasants, citizens, all of us. Dr. King once said, a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. I'm asking us to walk straight, shoulder to shoulder, together. Don't accept that what you're told can't happen. Don't let this conversation end here. Please take what the three of us have sent and continue this conversation with your friends and with your family. Talk about the American dream. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to communicate on everything, because it's important that my dream doesn't interfere with yours. I'm running for office to protect you from my opinion, not to inflict it upon you. It's important that we find a way to protect our ability to make our own path. And that's changed right now. I'm the average guy. I'm running for office because I feel it is my civic responsibility to stand up. I'm running for office because I think there needs to be a voice that is neither Republican nor Democrat, but of the people. And that voice needs to be heard now, because our country has to change. We know things are broken, and we can change things. My name is Dan Fishman. I'm running for Congress because I believe common sense requires common people. Thank you.
I want to thank North Shore Community College, our panelists, and most of all the candidates for coming today. Thank you all for coming out on such a beautiful day. Thank you.